The world of eurorack modules is quite confusing. On top of that, expanding fast. Every week there are new modules hitting the market. And once you've decided you're interested in modular, it can be very hard to get a grip on where to start. Giving advice isn't easy though, because one of the best things about modular is, well, that it's modular and you can use a modular to do all sorts of different things. Maybe you do want to build a custom monosynth, but maybe you are more interested in a sonic exploration lab, or a focused performance case, or maybe even a dedicated tool like a techno drum machine or effects processor. So what you need depends on what you want to do with it. In fact, I started this series with a video explaining those 4 system archetypes in case you're interested. This video is just the next part in the series. Today I focus on building a small starter mono voice, as I think that's a valid common start for many people. But I'll make a more advanced video about modules for an exploration lab soon, and might tackle more approaches if there's enough interest. As always, if you like to support my work or you want to get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I used in my videos, have a look at my Patreon. But now, let's dive right in. Starting with modular by building a small monosynth makes sense. By going for the modular road from the start, you have the option to customize each component and enjoy true signal path freedom. It's a great way to dive deep with synthesis. It's also valuable to start with a small monosynth if you already know you want to work towards a bigger system, like an experimental voltage lab, larger generative setup, or even a live case. If you buy good components, they will hold their value when your system expands. Let me repeat one thing though, if you feel synthesis holds many secrets to you, I often recommend picking up a semi-modular synth. There are tons of advantages, but I mentioned those many times, and this video just isn't about semi-modular synths. Let's say you made your decision to go modular already, then where to start. I'd still recommend starting small. Just buy a few core modules that make up a very fun and playable voice. Learn from and use those modules for a while, and then slowly expand from there once you get a good feeling for the direction you want to take your system in. This system is just an example to make some sounds. There are no sponsors, and in the next few chapters I'll talk about different features and manufacturers to look for. That's all valuable, but a bit more dry. Check the last chapter if you just want a few patches and sounds from this concept. Oscillators are the start of a modular sound, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. These days there are many powerful digital options with a massive sonic range on paper. However, if you're interested in exploring synthesis and starting small, in my opinion a great basic analog oscillator will hold value forever. A single oscillator can be an excellent core for a starting voice. And even when your favorite oscillator might end up being something else, a good core oscillator will remain a great tool for all sorts of classic sounds when your system expands, like stacked detuned waves and sync and FM sounds. On top of that, having multiple small voices is valuable in larger generative and performance systems as well. Here are a few examples. Oscillators like these all have subtle differences, but there are a couple of important things to look for. Oscillators that have multiple simultaneous waveform outputs have a lot of value. You might have gotten used to just picking one waveform on a standalone synth, but on a modular, creating voltage-controlled waveform mixing or wave shaping adds a lot of value. I made a full video about this trick if you'd like to learn more. Another powerful option is a sub-oscillator output. It's a simple trick, but in a small voice a sub-oscillator output can add a lot of extra oomph and fatness to a small setup. Just like outputs, a variety of inputs is important as well. More inputs results in more patches and sounds to explore. Classic inputs that are necessary for many traditional synth sounds are a sync input and a linear FM input. Any additional varieties in FM types, like exponential or through zero, just add more flavors to explore. On top of that, any direct waveform or shape modulation inputs add value. The classic example here is pulse width modulation. There are many fun options beyond the basic oscillator, digital ones included. These will have big advantages and special powers compared to the basic ones, but you will also often find they lack certain classic synthesis tricks or sounds. In my opinion, these are great options as a second oscillator, giving you the best of both worlds. Just like oscillators, filters are a core ingredient with tons of options to pick from. But again, I'd say a good sounding analog filter that's not too big and expensive will be something worth keeping in your case forever. It will be a crucial part of a starter voice, but also keep adding value when you want to create multiple voices or complex voices in larger setups. For example, by chaining filters for deep sound design or exploring stereo filter sounds. Here are a few examples. These all have subtle differences, but there are a few noteworthy pointers to look for. First off, filters that have multi-mode capabilities have a lot of added value. Whether they are switchable or have multiple different filtered outputs, different filter modes are fun to explore and add value when expanding your system. For a first filter though, make sure it has a low pass mode. CV inputs to modulate the filter cutoff are also important. I'd say a filter needs at least 2. Some filters have more, but some filters unfortunately only have 1. In the same way, input attenuators on the module's inputs are important to adjust the modulation depth. If you'd like to know why you should modulate a filter with multiple sources, I made a video about stacking filter modulation to make interesting sounds. Fewer inputs and attenuators you have on a filter, the bigger the need to buy other modules that do the mixing and attenuating. Just like with an oscillator, any additional CV inputs on a filter are valuable. A quite common option, even on compact price-worthy filters, is a CV input for resonance. This will just give you more options when patching and exploring sounds. Any other sound shaping options like drive, gain or distortion can make a simple voice sound bigger and more complex than it is, if you like that certain type of effect, of course. And finally, it's worth mentioning some filters have mixers built in. This gives you the added benefit of being able to mix multiple waveforms right from the start. And in the future, add other oscillators or sound sources to the same voice without needing to buy an additional mixer. But I'll come back to this briefly when talking about the VCA. More so than with basic oscillators, the sonic character between filters can differ a lot, and your preference is very personal. So it's valuable to watch a bunch of videos about filters you like to hear if you have a strong preference. It's likely and completely fine if you let the sound of a specific filter lead your choice rather than a CV input more or less. VCAs are the magic ingredient that makes modular interesting, but also easy to do wrong. When picking an oscillator or filter, there's quite some room for personal preference. But when it comes to a VCA, I have a very clear advice. Get a solid quad VCA right from the start. A quad VCA will likely hold its value regardless of what you want to do with your system. And the more your modular grows, the more uses you'll find for them. When you're starting out, you might think a quad VCA is overkill, but that's probably because in most standalone or VST synths, only the part used to control the volume of a sound is called a VCA. But in a modular, VCAs are also used to control the depth or level of modulation signals with other voltages. And they can be used as attenuators and even mixers as well. I'll demonstrate this in the last chapter of this video. But simply put, think of a quad VCA module as a signal flow hub that ties an entire setup together in a small case like this. Here are a few quad VCA examples. These all have a couple of the same very important features in common. First off, each individual VCA needs 2 controls. That means 8 controls on a quad VCA. 1 to manually open and close the VCA and 1 to attenuate the CV signal coming in. Don't settle for a VCA with a single knob or shared function controls. That really limits the options. Again, the last chapter has some practical examples. Second, the quad VCA needs to be a summing VCA. This means, one way or another, that channel outputs that are not individually patched are combined with the next channel in line. This means these quad VCA modules can be used as a 4-channel mixer, or for example as a 2-channel mixer and 2 independent VCAs. And just to explain, any single VCA can also be used as a manual attenuator to control the depth of modulation to an input that doesn't have an attenuator. For example, in many cases, a second filter input. The mixing and attenuating part is the reason I recommend a quad VCA from the start, even if it's a bit more expensive than a single or dual VCA. A quad VCA adds simple mixing and attenuating to your setup right from the start, and you can explore more complex modulation patches. A quad VCA will be the glue that holds a little setup together and makes it work. Modulation and specifically envelopes are where things start to get a bit more difficult. Envelopes are a final crucial part of completing a compact synth voice, but where the oscillator, filter and VCA can be core building blocks that easily hold their value, picking the right envelope is a bit trickier. That's because the right choice depends a lot more on your personal preferences and wishes. Not only are there a lot of different envelope types, from single attack decay envelopes to full attack decay hold release envelopes and even beyond. There are also many options when it comes to CV inputs, and it's even worth it to leave the standard envelope altogether and go straight for the more complicated function generator. If you plan to play your modular with a keyboard, the right modules for you will be different than if you plan to make many generative sequences. If all the envelope stages, behavior and pros and cons in various situations are new to you, I strongly recommend watching these two beginner-friendly videos first, as I won't repeat that info in this video. If you have your basic knowledge sorted, I do have a strong recommendation, and that is starting with 4 modulation sources. Starting with a single envelope and LFO will almost force your patch to be the same as any standalone synth, while having a quad modulation source allows you to explore and experiment with a variety of modulation to create interesting sounds and movements. One of the things I love most about the modular. To help you decide what might be best for you, let me explain 4 different approaches I think could be a good choice. Affordable quality is a great choice, not just if cost matters. These come in a lot of different envelope types and variations. A very important element here is that each of the envelopes has a looping function. This means a single module gives you any mix of envelopes and/or basic LFOs and is a great start to explore synthesis. Other categories don't just offer more for more money. Mostly more features come at the price of less envelopes and/or less hands-on control. CV-controlled multifunctionality is a bit of a jump up in complexity. These modules are all at least quad modulation sources, also with looping functions, so they can easily create both envelope and LFO-like modulation. The big change from the previous category is that they all offer CV control over certain elements. In most cases though, these modules come with more buttons, modes and shared functions and features, so you will have to read the manuals. Another thing to note is that many don't have easy attenuation for the modulation inputs, which means external attenuators or VCAs are needed to really get the most out of these modules, adding to the cost and size. Quad modulation sources still often are a relatively good deal, but another option is looking for separate single or dual envelope and LFO modules. This way you can expand in your own pace, mix and match envelope types, CV control, hands-on wishes and so on. There are way too many options to mention, but the 3-module combo on screen is a good example. The dual LFO also offers fluctuating voltages and noise, which is a great addition most envelope generators don't. There's a simple but complete full ADSR envelope and a single channel function generator. This trio of modules also offers a pretty full-fledged quad modulation package. I'm gonna stick though to saying 4 modulators is where modular patching comes to life. So just buying 1 or 2 to get started might feel underwhelming in the beginning. And finally, feature-rich function generators. I recommend these to people who are mostly interested in a modular as an experimental sound and voltage lab, or people who already know they'd like to expand towards generative or self-playing patches. These modules need a video on their own to explain in depth, but they all offer a lot of learning possibilities and exploration. If your goals are in line with that, it's worth the investment, even if you don't know exactly how they work. But keep in mind, these are just dual modulators, so I'd still recommend getting more. Also, most of these need external attenuation to function the best. So these modules definitely aren't just bigger and better. That was a lot of talking, so I made one hands-on example case. Just to be clear, this is not to pitch this specific setup or any of these modules, but to demo how a few core ingredients can come together. This setup has a single oscillator, single low-pass filter, quad VCA, and to keep it simple, a quad attack decay envelope. This is more of a hands-on example setup, but the quad VCA still allows for quite some interesting patching options. So this package is a very solid voice and fun way to start. At the same time, all these modules are valuable building blocks I still use in my cases after 12 years of modular. Let's have a look at a few patch examples. Here, the square output, sub-octave output and 2-octave sub-output of a single oscillator are sent to 3 VCAs of a quad VCA module. The sum output of the 3 VCAs is used to create a mix sent to the input of the low-pass filter. The 4th VCA is used as a regular VCA controlling the volume of the sound. A sequencer is tuning the oscillator and triggering 2 of 4 envelopes, one modulating the filter, the other the volume. To add some movement to the patch, one looping envelope is modulating the 3rd VCA controlling the volume of the 2nd sub-octave oscillator in the mix. And the pulse width of the oscillator is modulated with another slow looping envelope for some subtle character drifting. Here's a classic single oscillator filter VCA voice. A saw wave is used for dispatch, tuned by a sequencer, also triggering a single envelope. That envelope is used to modulate both the filter and VCA at the same time. The sum output of the 3 other VCAs from the quad VCA is used to modulate the filter, creating complex stack modulation. A slow and medium speed looping envelope are used as LFOs and sent to the first 2 VCAs. And the sub-octave output of the oscillator is sent to the 3rd VCA. To add more depth to dispatch, that VCA is modulated with the 4th envelope set to a slow looping mode. And finally, another simple oscillator filter VCA voice controlled with sequencer and envelope modulating the filter and VCA. Here, a single VCA is used as simple attenuator for the 2nd filter input, receiving a looping envelope used as LFO. Another looping envelope is set to such high speeds it's reaching audio rates. That signal is sent to another independent VCA and on to modulate the oscillator's frequency for metallic FM effects. That depth of modulation is controlled with another slow looping envelope for some automated movement. I hope that gives you some food for thought. If you'd like to learn more, have a look here, and as always, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.